Good news, finally good news. There are billions of dollars left over in stimulus funds. It can be claimed right now by many of you guys. You just don't know how to claim it yet, so in this video, I'll explain how to receive the stimulus money without doing much work.
Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Florida, the chair of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Committee, Ms. Wasserman.
Gentlewoman from Florida is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the chairwoman for yielding. I rise to support this continuing resolution that will keep our federal government open and deliver the vital services that impact us all. Look no further than Southwest Florida, in my home state, where Hurricane Ian inflicted tragic human loss and massive property damage. While we pray for those who endured Ian's wrath and those who still face it, let's pass this.
Child poverty fell dramatically in 2021 thanks to an expansion put in place last year that sent the monthly checks of up to $300 per child to eligible families. Yet many individuals and families eligible for the child tax credit, as well as another called the Earned Income Tax Credit, may not have received the money which they were entitled for. The take-up of the credits tend to be very large, and about 90% of eligible families applying for the tax credit and 80% of those in line for the Earned Income Tax Credit have submitted a refund. So according to the former commissioner of the IRS, it still leaves millions of people and eligible taxpayers who are not participating in these programs and being taken advantage of. The Child Tax Credit, Earned Income Tax Credit are aimed at helping low, moderate income families. Together they prompt the IRS to issue more than $100 billion in credits and also refunds annually. The Child Tax Credit was established for the purpose of helping parents pay for their children's needs. It also serves as an anti-poverty program. The Child Tax Credit was temporarily expanded in 2021 under this American Rescue Plan, and half of those sums were delivered through monthly payments, while the remaining balance is available for families through the 2021 tax returns. The Earned Income Tax Credit supplements wages for low to moderate income workers. It was also expanded under American Rescue Plans. In particular, it raised income limits, brought the maximum credit for workers without children to about $1,500, that's up from $560, and made it so workers ages 19 to 24 and 65 and up could qualify. Almost 11 million workers without children will receive this newly eligible credit. Recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau found the expanded child tax credit helped reduce child poverty by more than 40%, everybody, and that's good. It even as the American Rescue Plan provided more generous support for these credits, folks, it didn't reach all eligible individuals and families, which is not good. And guys, the expanded child tax credit covered around 65 million eligible children. However, the payments initially missed 6 million children who qualified and remained short of 4 million who were eligible at the end of last year. That's not all. About 5 million eligible people failed to claim the Earned Income Tax Credit every year, which amounts to about $7 billion in benefits. Much of the reason why people fail to access the credits comes down to administrative barriers. That includes lack of access to user-friendly tools, misperceptions, and about what it takes to qualify, and claiming complexity. And according to recent reports, consumers spent more in August on buying new cars and insuring them due to high inflation. The average price for a new vehicle in the United States was around $48,000 during that month. Insurance costs also rose 1.3%. U.S. home prices continue to climb during the summer. Home prices have actually jumped much more than before, and mortgage rates have been rising amid a series of aggressive interest rate hikes. So hopefully President Biden can do something about this, help out the American people, and send out stimulus payments, because it definitely needs to be done. It definitely needs to be done sooner than later. If you guys agree, tell me in the comments.
Continuing resolution and offer more than well wishes. Thankfully, President Biden declared a major disaster, unleashing extensive federal aid and assistance for the counties hit by Ian. But this CR will allow FEMA and other federal partners to keep assistance flowing to Florida in our time of need, while also aiding those hurting in Puerto Rico, Alaska, New Mexico, and Mississippi. We cannot leave communities behind that are still picking up the pieces from disastrous floods, wildfires, and hurricanes, and even basic water system failures. This federal funding bill comes to their rescue by helping to meet long-term housing, infrastructure, and recovery needs. This CR also extends funding for vital federal education, health, housing, and public safety programs. It keeps up school, job training, and child nutritional investments, and it keeps funds flowing to address badly needed affordable housing problems which plague so many families in Florida. Anyone who understands the housing struggles that millions of Americans face cannot possibly ignore the relief that this CR offers. And this legislation also keeps America's security intact. while also supporting those brave veterans who defended us. This CR also confronts Russia's fake elections to annex parts of Ukraine, whose families urgently need our support to defend global democracy and turn back a murderous communist tyrant. I am pleased that this continuing resolution before us reflects that vanishing breed of bipartisan, bicameral, negotiated compromise. I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle respect that and honor the trust that Americans hand us to maintain an orderly economy and state of affairs. This CR provides that basic test of governance. Americans want our government funding bills to help reduce their cost of living, support their families, create good jobs, and combat climate change. This continuing funding legislation gives us the time we need to ensure our 2023 bills will
of any of the last 4 recoveries. And we're also seeing that in terms of the strength of household balance sheets as well. Savings is up, debt is down, bankruptcy filings remain near pre-pandemic lows. All of these are sources of economic strength from which we can now focus on bringing prices down. The third point, this was an important piece of this, which is that
more states are offering new stimulus checks to their residents. $500 crisis aid payments are finally being mailed out. Top Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, are pushing for President Biden to send out federal inflation relief payments. So be sure to watch until the end of the video to find out how to receive the stimulus check. New Mexico residents will finally start to see relief payments hit their bank accounts and mailboxes. The governor announced the first round of payments will be sent this month. State officials say taxpayers who filed individual tax returns will see $250 and those who filed jointly or as head of households will see $500. There is no income limit for those receiving the first and third rebates. Those who filed a tax return do not need to do anything to receive their payment. Payments will come in the form of a direct deposit or by check, whichever was chosen on your tax return. But those who did not file a tax return will need to visit a state human services department to apply for the relief payments. And there are 2 more rounds of payments coming from New Mexico residents, one in July and one in August. There is an income limit for July payments, and thousands of low-income residents in Chicago have also moved one step closer to receiving free gas cards from the city. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot's proposed Chicago Moves plan has finally received approval from the City Council and the Budget Committee. This paves the way for the mayor's gas card plan to get a vote from the full City Council. Mayor Lightfoot had to tweak her original Chicago Moves plan in order for it to be considered for a vote. The revised ordinance will be allocated for the $12.5 million gas card lottery for residents of the city's residents. The ordinance calls for distributing up to 100,000 prepaid transit cards and up to 50,000 prepaid gas cards. But the mayor's proposal did not receive overwhelming support from the Budget Committee. It passed by a vote of 15 to 12. Some officials who voted yes said they did so reluctantly. Progressive lawmakers would like to see President Biden also cancel student loan debt before November's midterm elections. The White House's latest plans calls for limiting debt forgiveness to Americans who earn less than $150,000 in the previous year, or less than $300,000 for married couples filing jointly. 2 of the people said it was unclear whether the Biden administration will simultaneously require interest and payments to resume at the end of August, when the current pause is scheduled to lapse. According to new data reports, Americans owe a staggering $1.7 trillion in college debt, mostly federal loans. That's nearly $500 billion more than auto loans and double the amount of outstanding credit card debt in the United States. Many in the Democratic Party's progressive wing have called on President Biden to cancel student loan debt before November's midterm, a move they say could boost his approval ratings among young voters. Elizabeth Warren has noted that canceling student loan debt would close the wealth gap. She also stated if the President of the United States would cancel $50,000 of student loan debt, which he has the power to do, about 85% of the people who have student loan debt will see all of their debt wiped out. But Biden has questioned whether he has the power to cancel student debt through executive action. As it currently stands, the President has called on Congress to pass a bill forgiving debt that he could sign. The waiting game could affect voter enthusiasm. So, hopefully President Biden can do something about this. Increase the base funding schools receive by $5 billion for the upcoming year and by $10 billion in 2024 through 2025. Nearly $5 billion will be directed to universities and community colleges for deferred facilities maintenance and expansion of student housing. Another $1 billion will be earmarked for preschool programs, everybody. So, do you think that President Biden is doing all that it takes to send out the fourth stimulus check? And if you found this video useful, then tell me in the comments down below. SNAP monthly benefits, everybody, are going to be changing in a big way for millions of you guys. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer have actually agreed on a new timeline for the new social spending bill. You want to watch to the end of the video to find out how to receive the fourth stimulus check. Without further ado, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer met to discuss the possible legislation on reduced gasoline prices. Leaders are hoping to pass legislation dealing with gas prices before the end of May, but would actually need Republican cooperation in the Senate to do so. The GOP is pushing for expanded fossil fuel production domestically, something progressive Democrats may be unable to support, and rising prices are a top concern for many voters, and many Democrats already face a tough road to holding on to control of the House and Senate in the November election. The Federal Reserve's preferred measure of inflation is estimated to have risen 6.7% in March from a year earlier. The average price for a gallon of regular gasoline is around $4.13. The American Rescue Plan has also provided an additional boost aid program for elderly citizens who might need extra help with groceries and food each month. The Commodity Supplemental Food Program provides low-income elderly individuals with supplemental nutrition.
As a share of GDP in more than 2 decades, is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And in fact, they are projected to increase to 20% of GDP in 2022, which I believe is up about 17% from the previous forecast.
That's right. The revenues will reach just a slightly under 20%, which is up very substantially from our previous projections.
And we've seen approximately 8.3 million jobs created since President Biden first took office. Is that right?
Yes, the employment has grown, very sharply as the U.S. has come out of the pandemic. As you said, since the beginning of 2021.
And is it your understanding that 8.3 million jobs that were created, that's a record in American history for a similar point in time in terms of a president's new administration?
Yes, that would be the most jobs created in a single year. So that's over the 2021, the first year of the administration.
Am I correct that the number of people relying on unemployment benefits has dropped to the lowest level since 1970?
The number of people collecting unemployment benefits, it's dropped very substantially. I don't know offhand if it's the lowest, but I suspect it might well be. It's with the rebound and the very strong, very tight labor market, we've seen lots of good outcomes, like you just mentioned.
And last year, how many new businesses were created in the United States of America?
There's the rebound from the pandemic has led to a surge in business creation. Obviously we saw businesses go out when the economy locked down, and then a huge number have been created. I don't know the number of millions offhand, but it's been a historic increase in business formation and entrepreneurship.
It's my understanding that approximately 5.4 million new businesses were created in the last year, as you indicated, a substantial return of American entrepreneurship. In terms of deficit reduction, because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I thought were deficit hawks and cared about the deficit. That's all we heard about, certainly during the Tea Party years. Am I correct that in President Biden's first year, the deficit was reduced by more than $350 billion? Is that correct?